Get everyone's attention please and advise that we are starting the meeting and we are live streaming to the community on the City of Hobart's YouTube channel. We have everyone present except Councillor Ewan, who I think is coming in a couple of minutes, will be a little bit late, but is not an apology for the meeting as such. I would like to acknowledge country, as we do here, which is that we are in recognition of the deep history and culture of the place. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which the City of Hobart was built. I would like to acknowledge the determination and resilience of the Palawa people of Tasmania, who have survived invasion and dispossession and continue to maintain their identity, culture and rights. The minutes of our last meeting was on the 24th of May. Deputy Lord Mayor. Seconded by Councillor Dutta. Any changes to the minutes? None. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Are there any items that would like to be transferred to any other part of the agenda? No transfer of agenda items.
Just a question, Lord Mayor.
Yes.
Just there's a closed item, a planning closed item. I just want to say, is it possible through you to the appropriate officer why we can't discuss that planning matter in open? It can, you know, it's a planning matter. It's relative to our community. I know there might be some legislative requirements, but you know we tend to want to change meeting procedures to suit ourselves. So I'm just asking the question.
Order.
What's the point of order?
Lord Mayor, we don't change meeting procedures to suit ourselves. It's an untrue statement.
Well, I've got legal advice to say otherwise, but anyway, I'll retract that. I've got legal advice to say otherwise. I'll retract that. But I'm just curious as to what the legislative requirements are in respect of matters that come back from the tribunal for this council to consider that are being considered firstly in open.
Yes, through you, Lord Mayor. The matter's currently in mediation, and so it's a confidential sort of procedure at this point in time. So, under those circumstances, I don't think it should be put into open.
Okay, so the
applicant.
Yes, Deputy Lord Mayor.
This seems to come up quite often, and I know that information has gone out previously in relation to this, but perhaps we can send a memo and just a cheat sheet or FAQ in relation to this matter, please.
In relation to which matter? This matter on the closed?
Yeah, no, to the matters that are before the tribunal.
I see. Okay, so I think Alderman Zuko, that is, did you still want to try and move that into that's been the advice, you've received the advice. Do you want to maybe do that later after the matter's been discussed?
Lord Mayor, personally I believe we need to revisit it. No, I think we'll revisit it another time, not tonight.
Okay, no worries. All right, so communications from the Chair. I've got a few tonight. The first one is that on the 28th of May, in an official call, the Deputy Lord Mayor received the Chinese Consul General, Mr. Long Zhao, and he provided this gift. There was an exchange of gifts, and he provided this gift to the Deputy Lord Mayor, and I think Council. And to Council, yes. And I think they discussed a range of things. The other thing that's a very good piece of good news is that the Local Government Professionals Australia Tasmania Award. So on the 3rd of June, council officers were presented with an award of excellence in the Local Government Professionals Australia Tasmania Community and Service category. This is for the Hello Hobart Passport to Hobart program, which you'll recall was something that was pulled together by our staff in response to the pandemic, with the goal of getting people out and about at venues around Hobart. So as a state winner, this is an automatic entry into the national awards being held in Canberra this year. So on behalf of elected members, I'd like to congratulate all the staff that were involved in the program. Thank you to everyone. I'd also just like to highlight an announcement made on Friday that provides more certainty for the Hobart Waterfront festivities this year. So following discussions between the state government and council representatives, an expression of interest was advertised on Saturday, seeking submissions to run a taste-style event on the Hobart Waterfront over the Christmas-New Year period. This is the document that the state government have put together. It's on the website. So the EOI will allow for proponents to outline their vision for a Taste of Tasmania style event. And the Tasmanian government has says that they will provide financial support and the use of PW1, and it will be, so I would really like to just thank the state government for this commitment. It is a really positive step for Hobart and follows on from our decision about a month ago. And I'm sure that in the coming weeks and months we'll continue to work closely with the government and aim to assist and complement them and whoever is their successful tenderer from the EOI process. And I'm sure once we've got some clarity about that, we'll be looking forward to seeing how we can assist in that process. So that was another bit of good news since we last met. Thank you. So, notification of council workshops. We had 2 in the last couple of weeks, or since we last met. So, on the 25th of May, we had a budget workshop and 8 elected members were in attendance. And on the 1st of June, there was a workshop on the Affordable Housing and Homelessness Commitment, and there were 4 elected members in attendance. Are there any public questions? No one's in the gallery. And any on notice? No. Okay. Are there any petitions that we've received? Anyone's received?
No, Neil.
There being none? No. Okay. So supplementary items, I don't think we have any. So we'll move on to indications of pecuniary or conflicts of interest. Do any elected members wish to indicate an interest in any item?
Item 14, Lord Mayor.
So Deputy Lord Mayor is item 14. Any others? Okay, there being none, we'll move on to the City Planning Committee, and I'll now invite Deputy Lord Mayor to introduce item 9.1 and note that we are acting as a planning authority.
Lord Mayor, this is a realignment and upgrade of a path. There's a shared use trail at 38A Nicholas Drive and various other bits of land in Sandy Bay. So moved.
Second by Alderman Barakis.
Lord Mayor, this is in the park leading up to Porters Hill, and essentially the current trail alignment is steep and presents an ongoing safety and environmental impact concern. It's informal in character with no form drainage or surface treatments. Its treatment is extremely slippery in wet conditions, and as a shared use track has the potential for injury for mountain bikers and other users. So, and there's some illegal construction for an alternative route. So it's really to formalise this some more and to make it a less problematic path. It was called the Sly Grog track, which currently follows a steep alignment on the eastern slopes of Bicentennial Park in Sandy Bay and presents an ongoing safety and environmental risk, as said. So there are some heritage elements to the conditions as well as environmental. There were no representations in this, and the committee recommended for approval.
Further discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 9.2. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Lord Mayor, this it comes to council with no recommendation. So what I'll do is present the report from committee. So, Lord Mayor, this was for 607 to 627 Nelson Road, which was a subdivision with 9 additional lots, and was approved it was approved in November 2018 for 9 additional lots, road lot, public open space lot and balance up on Nelson Road in Mount Nelson. It was approved according to the previous planning scheme, so the City of Hobart Planning Scheme 1982, with a number of discretions, so siting and landscaping, clearing of land, res code, which was residential density, and that had to do with frontage of lots and the 25 metre inscribed circle. It also had Schedule Q, which was in relation to storm surge and flood prone land. There were 4 representations. They were mainly looking at ecological and environmental elements. There wasn't any, it was approved in November 2018 and there was no appeal. However, as you're aware, an applicant must do works within 2 years, and they haven't done any substantial commencement of works. Quite often we automatically approve this kind of extension. However, given that we have stronger environmental codes and biodiversity codes, it's recommended was recommended to committee to not approve this extension. So, and that's the position that I'll put forward tonight. We did have a discussion about, well, you know, there are heritage, or there are environmental conditions in this, embedded in this conditional original condition, but the biodiversity codes now are much stronger. So it's certainly, to my mind, this whilst this area can still be developed, perhaps this is not the right form of development that should be occurring.
Alderman Brackus.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just a question before I start.
Oh, sorry, that was seconded by, I think that was seconded by
No,
Councillor
we don't.
Hart.
I was going to move the original officer's recommendation motion.
Well, I think that's what.
We've already,
Needed.
we need a second.
Are you happy to second that?
You moved the original motion,
That's
so I'm
right.
happy to second the original motion, yes.
Seconded by Councillor Harvey. Alderman Brackus.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, just before I start, I've got a question just for the director, just for the sake of the record. How many lots would this be proposing to add to the to our? How many lots would it be proposing to add?
Through you, Lord Mayor, 9 additional lots.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is a development application that was approved by council. It was deemed to be compliant with the planning scheme by this very same council, and this council approved it prior to us even beginning our discussions of housing crises or housing affordability crises. It's proposed to add 9 additional lots, and this same council, which had previously approved this development, is now effectively aiming to renege on its approval of this. I think, once again, it sets, well, it doesn't set a precedence, because I think the precedence has already been set, but it does continue a trend, a worrying trend on this council, where we talk a big game about our priorities as a city, but we don't seem to back those up when it comes time to make decisions. We have an application here that was previously approved by this council, and we're now effectively looking at turning around, changing our mind and saying, no, we don't want these to be developed. I think that's extremely concerning. I think it sends a really, really bad message to those wanting to develop and provide more housing in this city. And I think it's just becoming part of a growing perception, which is more and more often becoming proven to be true, that Hobart's becoming too difficult to develop in. So, look, I would be extremely concerned if we were to be supporting the motion moved by the Deputy Lord Mayor. I'd be foreshadowing that we do grant I'll be foreshadowing a motion that we do grant the extension as requested by the developer. I think anything less, I think, would be to the detriment of the city, and I'd be imploring everybody to be supporting the foreshadowed motion.
Alderman Briscoe.
Yes, just a question first, Lord Mayor, through the appropriate officer. How much public open space is being allocated to this, which will, if this development gets extension tonight?
Mr. Noyes, sorry.
Yes, just bear with me, Lord Mayor. I'll just check the plan and the report. Through you, Lord Mayor, 1.95 hectares.
Yeah, so nearly 2 hectares, which is quite significant, isn't it? And the proposed development, another question through you, Lord Mayor. Proposed development is adjacent to already just normal building blocks by the look of it? Normal residential lots?
Through you, Lord Mayor, it is adjacent to residential lots and much larger lots as well.
Yeah. So the Lord Mayor, if I just look at the applicant has pointed out to all of us the number of delays which weren't his fault or their fault. So in this case, I think it's a natural justice thing. To me, it's a reasonable subdivision, close to services, close to already fairly dense building residential sites. Looking at the plan, there is a considerable amount of open space of nearly 2 hectares being public open space, and then there's a balance of the block which is very steep by the look of it, and presumably will never be built on. But that will come if that came back as a. Perhaps I should just. The balance of the block, which is, if I point out which page it's on, it might help, page 276 of the report that's attached to our agenda. That balance of the lot, what's the function of that? Is that remain undeveloped or unsubdivided?
Through you, Lord Mayor, there's a house, a dwelling on it already, as I understand it. So there's no intention at this point in time to develop that lot, as I understand it.
Yeah, presumably it'd be very hard to develop, but if it was, it would come under the new planning scheme. There'd be no. So when you look at the overall lot, it's up the top is a small subdivision of 9. Then there's public open space, and there's this huge 5.5 hectares, presumably above it. It's got 1 house on it. So overall, I think with the conditions that original conditions were put to look after swift parrots and ovata and other things, I think it's a sufficient, sufficient protection. If it was for the whole lot, the whole property, then I would have a different view about it. But it is concentrated in the end where I said where the development's happening, there's public open space, and then there's this 5 hectares of the balance, which has only got 1 house on it, and it's not subject to this development. So this is not going to crash round our ears and say the swift parrot is now doomed, the ovata is doomed, and other species is doomed. It's going to be just part of an orderly development, and that's probably why it'd be nice to know who voted for this development in 2018, but presumably it was unanimous. Let's say it was unanimous, and now, a little bit after 2 years, we vote on it again, and I think that's unfair. And certainly that's why it's come to council, that we can put the community judgment on it. We will not be judged on this. We're just giving an extension with a whole heap of conditions that protect the environment.
Councillor Dutta.
Lord Mayor, I have 2 questions. Firstly, when this council at any time approves a development application, is there a second stage where other rules and regulations and procedures need to be met? That's question number 1.
Mr. Noy, did you want to respond?
Through you, Lord Mayor, I think Councillor Data may be talking about any conditions of approval that we might impose on a planning application, and those conditions normally relate to meeting and supplying detailed engineering drawings and the like to satisfy compliance with the relevant council and Australian standards.
Thank you. And the second question is, there has been claims made that the delay is about 10 months, and a lot of the fault lies with the council staff. Now, if that is the case, is this undue delay, which then harbours on procedural fairness? I'm not asking that particular question, I will speak to that. But what I'm asking here is this: the 10 months delay, was it caused by council staff?
Noy.
Through you, Lord Mayor, look, I don't believe 10 months can be attributed to council staff in relation to delays, although I would say that these drawings were submitted at a time when we were subject to COVID shutdown and staffing number reduction. So there was some delay as a result of processes going through council approval. So I can't say that we are guilt-free in relation to delays that have been attributed here.
Councillor Dada? No? I think Alderman Thomas wanted to speak next.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. My belief would be that we're not actually dealing with anything to do with the old application, but purely whether or not it's reasonable to grant a request to extend time. So all of the rest of it is really irrelevant, as long as you can say that you've looked at it in terms of the reasonableness. And I hear Alderman Briscoe saying something on, or Councillor Dutta on fairness. So there's been a number of applications like this before, and we've stuck on what is reasonable. Is it reasonable in relation to the request to extend? We haven't gone back to say the planning scheme has changed. We've just been, right, that's the way we've normally done it. We look at the reasonableness of the application to extend, not whether the law has changed or anything else has happened to help affect the situation.
Yes, through you, Lord Mayor. Look, officers have delegated authority to extend planning permits only where there hasn't been a significant change in the policy position, planning policy position. Now, in this case, there has been significant change in the planning policy position from the original 1982 planning scheme under which we considered the previous application as compared to the current scheme that's in place. So it's that question, does council want to consider it in light of the policy change, or does it want to not consider that and within its rights extend the permit for 2 years?
This is a follow-up, Lord Mayor. The reality, though, is that a policy change, the substantive rights are with the applicant who got the approval. Some unfortunate circumstances happened and they came to ask for an extension. So whether there's a policy change or anything, we're only dealing as an administrative group with the application to extend. We're not dealing with policy changes, we're dealing with the right or wrong of the application to extend. So whether the policy's changed or not, I think is irrelevant.
Alderman Zuko.
Oh, Lord Mayor, look, these are the type of applications that really do my head in. It's for an extension of time on an approval. Okay. We can blame COVID, we can blame wind, we can blame anything about the reasons. Are they relevant or not relevant? They're not relevant because we did approve it. You know, the director has not necessarily said yes or no on who's to blame. Who cares who's to blame? It's irrelevant. The relevance here is that it was approved, yes, maybe under a different planning scheme, but we approved it. They're only seeking an extension of time. And I think we all understand that, when development is substantially started, you know, even if they had done so, you know, it would have overcome the issue. I think we're really playing on pedantics here, because it's not a new application under this planning scheme. It's just seeking, hey, we just need a bit more time. And here we are with a city that is crying out for more housing development, and we're talking about 9 additional lots here that we approved under the previous planning scheme. Look, I just don't get it. I don't understand why we have to argue as to whether there's this fine line about, you know, someone jumped the fence before it was 3 metres high or 2 metres high, because that's what we're talking about here. They had a valid application under the previous planning scheme. It's nine blocks of land, but we're just going to be very difficult, or want to be difficult, to say, no, you're not going to have the extension of time, and that's absolutely absurd. What we need to also do is go back on our records. Have we provided other developers over the years an extension of time? And I would say, Lord Mayor, that 99% of the time we have. This is not that 1%. There were reasons why the 1% didn't happen, but this is not that 1%. I think we've just got to show some fairness and equity here. And the reality is, over the last 2 years, we have been faced by a pandemic. And let's hypothetically say I was a developer during a pandemic, going to a bank or doing all these things or whatever needed to be done. I assure you, during that pandemic time, everything would have been on the slowdown. So I think we need to at least give some consideration to the fact of what's happened in this country over the last 2 years. I think this is valid, and I think we shouldn't be sort of worrying too much about plucking straws.
Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, this is obviously an interesting one, because I think we can all agree that the applicant didn't change their policy in regards to this. It was no fault of their own, if you like, that if this was brought forward under a new planning scheme, it would be treated differently. And I guess that's the crux of the issue. Look, I think the Deputy gave a good summation when she introduced this item, but perhaps for those that weren't on the committee meeting, what I think was telling was, this application originally had, I think, 6 people objecting to it. The applicant actually worked with council and reduced the number of lots. They're quite large lots, some of them are over 2,000 square metres. It then only had 4 in the original application they put in. That was then approved, and we all know that's good. And then, we obviously give a timescale for that, which they didn't quite meet. Now, we've heard from a director that there's actually some guilt on Hobart City's, or potentially some guilt on Hobart City's point of view as to why the delay is. We didn't get any objectors presenting to us at the council. No one in the community came forward and gave us, there was original objectors to this proposal, but no one came forward when this was open and gave a thing. The only person we heard from were the surveyors saying, look, when you make this decision, you need to be aware that we, as professionals in our field, we experience significant delay in dealing with council, and we feel strongly that this wasn't 100% our fault. We would submit designs, we'd submit questions, we'd try and work with council, and we frankly didn't get back timely responses, timely designs, and now we find ourselves in a position where we sought an extension of time. And furthermore to that, they even presented and said, look, we never thought we'd even get that rejected. To us, seeking an extension of time was normal, was natural. We all know what happened in 2020 and why things might have been delayed or a bit slow, but it was very strong, I thought. They told us that, look, natural justice should happen here. And I think if I look back to the Providence, clearly they're happy to work with council. They made adjustments to their scheme. They brought forward bigger blocks. They've put off, as Alderman Briscoe said, significant portions of the site for open space. So, in my mind, I think we might be fearful what we're going to end up here if we knock this back. They might go back to the drawing board and bring forward even more dents or even more things. But look, I just feel that in this case, we need to be honest to ourselves and admit that, look, this isn't a scenario where they're just sitting here and they're wanting to flog this subdivision off with an approval already there and they just want to seek an extension of time. They generally have been working. They presented evidence to that effect, and they presented that the reason they're at this point now of seeking extension is not necessarily because of their lack of will to progress it, but because they've actually had delays and difficulties in dealing with us and trying to get it all through. So look, I think that that we do need to acknowledge that. We do need to acknowledge that this is an application who, the whole way through the process, has actually been doing the process properly, has been working with council officers, making adjustments and changes where required, and we should allow them the extra time that they need, ultimately, to bring these 9 blocks to market. Thanks.
Lord Mayor, I need to respond to a comment that was made at the start of this debate, and that comment was that there's a worrying trend in this council. A worrying trend. And it was in reference to council following officers' guidance and recommendations. That's what that worrying trend was, that we listen to the officers, that we follow the officers' recommendation. We don't rubber stamp things in this council. We do follow the planning scheme, and we follow the current planning scheme, not the past planning scheme. And unfortunately for these developers, the officers weren't in a position to grant an extension, so they had to bring it to council. They couldn't grant an extension, which is the normal process, because the planning scheme had changed significantly and the land in question had been rezoned, which meant that this proposal of 2 years ago would no longer be acceptable under the current planning scheme. It's as simple as that. So unfortunately, they've missed the boat. They hadn't commenced their proposal. The officers couldn't grant them an extension, so therefore they've brought it to us. And if the council chooses to grant that extension, then it's up to the council. However, I do find it hard to stomach someone suggesting that there's a worrying trend in council that we reject proposals. We usually base our decisions on officers' recommendations. So, I just think that worrying trend should have been withdrawn.
A question, Lord Mayor, to the appropriate officer, which presumably is the Director.
Yes, Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you. I recall, I just have to give a slight background, I recall the policy that you are relying at coming back to us was a council-determined policy and not a legislative requirement or statutory requirement. Can you confirm that?
Yes, yes, through you, Lord Mayor, that is correct. It's a council.
Council policy which could be changed or not?
It certainly could.
Thank you.
Okay, further discussion? Any further discussion? No. Councillor Dutton.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Now, I also would like to endorse the comments made by Councillor Harvey. I think he has quite succinctly put the points very clearly. And it is my understanding, from what I've heard, that we approved this application in 2018. Once the application was approved, it is my understanding, it's a fact that an applicant is given 2 years plus 6 months to complete all the other requirements and conditions of their application. Time has expired. That's my understanding. It's a fact. The time has expired. Therefore, I endorse the points made. It has gone to staff. It is not in their jurisdiction to make this decision because of the policy change, and therefore it has come to us. I don't see any problems with that. The issue for me here is clearly this, with regards to extension of time, whether procedural fairness was observed by the Hobart City Council staff. For me, that is the issue. Now, the only worrying element for me is that when the statement was made by the director that there is fault on both sides. Now, was that undue delay in responding to the applicant also our fault? If it is, then I am leaning towards saying for that particular matter with regards to procedural fairness, we should give this particular application a fair go. But on the basis of the recommendation of staff, I fully endorse that under this particular policy, we have no choice but to look at it, and under the code of the biodiversity code, it just does not satisfy the requirements. Thank you.
just ask, sorry, because I wasn't at the planning meeting, if this subdivision, what would this subdivision look like if it was to comply with the current planning scheme? Roughly, I mean, not a big description, but just the basics.
Lord Mayor, look, that's a fairly significant hypothetical, but it would look different from what's being proposed at the moment. The advice from the environmental planner has indicated that the current proposal would not meet the biodiversity code as it currently stands, current scheme, and therefore there would have to be a significant alteration. What form that took, I wouldn't like to speculate.
But presumably, is it because that there's going to be more clearing than would be allowed for, or there would be less lots if it was to comply? Like, was there ever a discussion with the proponent about, well, actually you've run out of time, we've got a new planning system, but you could still do it, but it would just need to look like this?
No, Lord Mayor, look, I don't believe so. I mean, that question was never asked of us. And so, but it's fair to say that the fact that we're not recommending the approval to extend it does give you an indication that that the policy position has changed quite significantly, and yes, for those reasons, the current proposal would result in quite a significant land clearing required. And that would simply not satisfy the current biodiversity code.
Right, but it still would, just sorry, last question, it would still be possible to have a subdivision here under the new scheme. It just might be a different,
Look, I wouldn't...
some less clearing or something.
Yeah, look, I think the clearing is fairly minimised as much as possible under the current configuration. So yes, there would definitely need to be less lots. I know you're asking for some definitive position, but I just can't give you that with the knowledge that I've got at this point in time.
Okay, Deputy Lord Mayor, did you want to sum
I
up?
just have a question slightly before.
Yes,
sorry.
Alderman Zuko.
Just through you to Mr. Noy. I just can't remember. I'd save me looking it up. I think they don't, but has the applicant the opportunity to take this to the planning tribunal? I don't think they do, but just want to clarify.
Through you, Lord Mayor, I don't believe so. No.
Yeah, that's right. I thought so. Okay.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think we've had a fairly fulsome discussion in relation to this, and I suppose just to draw on a couple of points. This is a really important part of our good governance, I think, to review this rather than just have officers consider this, because we're looking at it compared to the current planning scheme and not the previous planning scheme. So we've had significant changes in the planning scheme, which has been stated, and there is an upgrade that we should be adhering to as this planning scheme. Rather than suggesting that it's not an important part of our consideration. So I think it's quite clear that that is. In answer to some of your questions, Lord Mayor, you raised about the different sort of configuration and what could be built, and we did discuss, I think Alderman Briscoe brought up the point about public open space being a critical thing in this development, and I think the developer has really thought hard about that public open space. But that doesn't preclude public open space being part of any subsequent application. This has been upgraded to protect biodiversity. We're in the peri-urban fringe. There is a good connection with the mountain and the Mount Wellington Park. So we should be, and the back of Mount Nelson. So we should be looking at protecting, as the planning scheme suggests, protecting the biodiversity is so important, and I think it's raised here. in relation to further protection of the swift parrot. And so the obviously there are two schools of thought in relation to this, but I feel very strongly that we shouldn't grant this further extension.
I'll put that. All those in favour. Oh, sorry. The motion is to not grant the extension. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. No. Show of hands. All those in favour.
Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Deputy Lord Mayor and Lord Mayor.
Point of order.
Against.
Point of order.
Oh.
I don't know why Alderman Brackus happens to be laughing in the middle of the vote. I don't.
I said I almost put my hand up instinctively. There was
Okay.
no.
All right. Let's. All those against say no.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Sexton, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Coates, Councillor Ewan, Alderman Baracus, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe.
Not carried.
Sorry, not carried. Sorry.
Yeah, could I move the foreshadowed motion?
I'd already foreshadowed it.
Oh, you'd already foreshadowed? Yeah, okay.
Lord Mayor, I think there's already been enough debate on this. I think everyone's said what they need to say. So I won't offer too much more, but I'll move the motion that I foreshadowed earlier that we grant the extension.
Seconded by Alderman Thomas. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Show of hands. All those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Sexton, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Coates, Councillor Ewan, Alderman Baracus, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe.
Against.
Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Deputy Lord Mayor and Lord Mayor. It's carried, Lord Mayor.
Okay, now we're moving on to item 10, which is the draft Southern Tasmanian Regional Cat Management Strategy. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I move the motion that's on the books. Lord Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Ewan.
Lord Mayor, there has been significant work undertaken. In 2018, the Tasmanian Government funded 3 regional cat management coordinators across Tasmania to help implement aspects of the Tasmanian Cat Management Plan for 2017 to 2022. There's a working group, and Ms Turner is the council representative on that working group, but we have 10 Lives Cat Centre, RSPCA, Australian Veterinary Association, as well as state government, and it's really looking at it's identified the potential benefits of developing a Southern Tasmanian cat management strategy, so to try and reduce things like, or increasing awareness of responsible cat ownership, protecting significant conservation of commercial and community assets, reducing the stray cat population, uncontrolled cat breeding and welfare concerns, increasing cat management capacity and accessibility to cat management services throughout the region, complying with the Cat Management Act, improve knowledge to better inform cat management and strategic governance and resourcing. Now, it is an opt-in and a non-binding arrangement, which has its limitations, but cat management is otherwise expensive, so there's no sort of revenue for really dealing with cat management for councils. And so, you know, it's not the strongest of positions and strategies, if you like. We have included as part of this motion that an invitation be extended to the Executive Officer of the 10 Lives Cat Centre to present to elected members in relation to cat management. The 10 Lives Cat Centre is the peak body, so hearing from them I think would be very useful. So I imagine they will present to one of the City Planning Committee meetings, but it will give us a greater understanding of the pros and cons of just providing support in some areas and not others.
Okay. Further discussion? Councillor Harvey.
Lord Mayor, I'll declare that I am associated with the 10 Lives Cat Centre, but I have no pecuniary interest there. So I don't think I need to declare an interest and leave the room. But what I would like to say is I understand all the points in this strategy, in this plan. It's unfortunate that we don't have the resources to make some of those actions a reality. So I think the council, and this is, I'm not going to move any amendments. I just, I assume the officers already get the seriousness, as well as every person around the table here also understand the threat that our native biodiversity faces because of feral and domestic cats. So I won't be moving things, but there are some low-hanging fruit that don't cost a lot of things that council could consider at some point, and that's cat-free zones, cat exclusion zones. That costs nothing. It costs an ad in the Mercury paper on a Saturday. That's all that costs. It's the enforcement of it that councils are afraid of, because as soon as someone says there's a cat in the park, then how do you go and enforce that cat, or enforce, finding the owner of that cat or dealing with that cat? So it's a real struggle to come up with solutions that don't cost us a lot of money. But we could declare cat-free areas for nothing, for a cost of an ad in the paper. And I would like to think we can consider that, because what that ends up doing is sending the signal that you need to keep your cats out of our parks and reserves. And most people will respond to that positively, and then it's the other handful of people that don't respond to it. So I'm hopeful that over time we do come up with some actions and some serious strategies within this framework, and that we do seek to find the resources to be able to manage our cat issues more effectively, and that's working in partnership with other agencies as well. So even though I don't think this is a very strong plan, because it doesn't actually say we're going to do anything and everything's optional, I do think that there's opportunities to do parts of it at the lowest cost. Yeah.
Alderman Zuko.
No, I'm just giving more than
okay.
someone.
Further discussion? Can I just get clarity just on, based on what Councillor Harvey just said? So are our, like a reserve, nature reserve like Naclofty, for example, presumably cats are not allowed in those reserves? Like, is that something we've decided, or?
Mr. Parks Chairman.
Alderman Briscoe.
Look, it's one of those things that, yes, there would be cats there, but how you'd stop the cats from going there, that's the big thing. I suppose the new act brought before the Parliament, which is now law, where you have to microchip cats. Any cats caught that are domestic cats, the owners will be found. And I think there is and the director who's there would probably agree with me, there is a program of reducing the feral cats.
Sure,
yeah. Detail.
Yeah. Okay, but sorry, just to clarify, but we haven't actually said that we don't want cats in our bushland reserves. We haven't made that law.
I think we have to.
Well, as the Chairman said, there is no official policy, but certainly where we have evidence that we do have problems with feral cats, we take programs to help address those issues, and we do that in various ways.
Thank you.
Lord Mayor, I can't resist. I got myself into trouble in about 1992, I think. I made a flippant comment that we should get a sponsor for this, like Coca-Cola, and give a can of Coke to each young child that brought back a cat. And I got absolutely slammed by a few people who I saw the next day. It was only a flippant comment, Lord Mayor. But I just thought about something right then there, Lord Mayor, and hopefully this might sort of also bring a smile to people's faces. I know we want to stop cats from entering our reserves. Are we going to put signs on our reserves so cats can read the sign and not to come onto our reserves? Because I'm just wondering how on earth we're going to monitor this. It really, like, I can understand what we're trying to do, but I think that we've all had cats, and I've got cats, Lord Mayor. Trying to get them from entering. Yes, I understand we're going to go through this process. It's going to be very, very interesting. Maybe we should teach cats to read, and then we'll be right.
We'll teach the owners to read.
No, the cats, the ones we're banning, not the owners.
No further discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. City Planning Committee, Animal Management.
Yes, Lord Mayor, I'll move this this item, and it's basically another a fee that was missed. So if pensioners with non-D6 dogs pay before the 31st of July, then they'll be charged $60. But after 31st of July, there'll be a late fee, and the late fee is $75. So get your animals in before July.
Lord Mayor, can I just have clarification that is there a fee for people who are non-pensioners, non-D6 dogs? It is the same amount. Why signal out pensioners?
Mr. Noy.
Lord Mayor, it's to provide them with some discount because they are
Oh, so there is the fee for non-D6 dogs for the rest of the population is a lot higher.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 12 is a motion from Alderman Zuko, which I think, Alderman Zuko, you wanted to circulate a different...
I'm circulating an amended motion, Lord Mayor. I've circulated it today to the General Manager, Mr Jackson, by the General Manager at about 4 o'clock today, which was put on this table here, I think, at about 4:15 to 4:30 as well, Lord Mayor. So it's been there for a while. It's no different to any other motions we might get come differently from committee. So elected members have had ample opportunity to put forward. Firstly, Lord Mayor, I'll move the motion if anyone wants to second it.
Seconded by Alderman Baracus.
Right, Lord Mayor, I just want to make these points firstly. On the 10th of April, this council had a matter that went to closed committee.
10th of May, I think it was.
10th of May, yeah, sorry, 10th of May, went to closed committee. I moved in this council that we should discuss that in open committee. I don't know whether or not it would have happened or not happened, but once things go into an open environment, the nature of any item changes. We know what happens with closed items. None of us can actually speak about it and whatever have you. I had concerns in respect of the nature in which we were going forward with wanting to, whatever we wanted to do, whether it's cease doing the taste, have a taste, not have a taste, or whatever have you. I read the motion very, very carefully, Lord Mayor, and it concerned me greatly. And it concerned me on the basis that the Taste of Tasmania, or an event like that on the waterfront, provides not only huge economic benefit to the city and the state, and I remember Mr Ron Banks saying to me once that the actual marketing of that event would cost this council in the millions of dollars to market the city. I've been associated with the event from its second year, because the first year I was actually working on the North Hobart Multicultural Festival, which ran successfully for many, many years. I was a stallholder, and I've been associated with its development. I've been associated with international events and events like the First Festivali and a number of festivals and Festivali and everything like that over the years. I had concerns in respect of, I felt that this council may have not made the correct decision. Some people may have a different viewpoint. That's fine. Just one point, sorry, I want to go back, Lord Mayor. In moving my motion, I want to move it in two parts, and hopefully the mover and the seconder will accept it. I want to move it in parts 1 to 3, and part 4 to be a part 2. If the seconder is happy with that? Happy with that. Thank you. Lord Mayor, over the last 4 weeks, and I believe it's, again, we've wasted another 4 weeks on whether or not the government, God or whoever may potentially deliver an event across the waterfront. It doesn't concern me, Lord Mayor. What concerns me is how we as a council can at least have some very clear direction, because I don't believe that the motion that we had on the 10th of April is very, very clear. There is arguments as to whether or not what it means, what it doesn't mean, and that. One of the things that we've been very, very clear on this council floor over the years, and I've heard it from Councillor Harvey and others, let's make sure that the wording is very, very clear. So I don't believe the wording on the 10th was very clear. I also understand that there's been movement along the way. The question is, would that movement been as quickly as it has happened if there hadn't been a lot of noise in the media and a lot of noise happening and that? That's a question that everyone can sit there and answer themselves. I'm not going to say otherwise, because that's something we can all determine. This motion, Lord Mayor, now I'd like to read it. It's basically saying that considering that the Department of State Growth, which is an ad that was in Saturday's paper, have looked at the potential of having a taste style event or similar, the council considers providing in-kind assistance as a one-off for the 2021 taste that would assist in the delivery of the event should one proceed. I'm being very, very cautious there, and cost it accordingly. Now, to my point of view, for best practice that this council's had over the years, that we delegate to the General Manager any possible one-off in-kind assistance that may be sought with an urgent report back to council and outcomes. Now, that is saying, give the delegated authority to the General Manager should the outcomes of that EOY come forward with someone wanting some in-kind council assistance. General Manager negotiates, discussed officially down the line, and a report comes back to council. Also, I'm saying, subject to the EOY outcome, should the government consider an alternative approach, because we don't know what the EOY is going to bring. The government may not suit the government. It could be something else. If it's something else, again, the further report be prepared for potential possible funding or in-kind assistance that the council may provide. I'm not asking anyone to approve funding. I'm saying that a report come back. Again, part 3, should an appropriate alternative approach to deliver the 2021 taste style event or similar event be forthcoming, the CEO be delegated to negotiate with the event, stall holders and government. So it's opening and expanding it right out. In particular, should a long-term plan, because this is very, very important, and I'll just explain something about business. If I was a business person seeking to put up a proposal to the government or this council on developing a taste style event at the waterfront, the last thing I'd be doing is going, well, I'm only going to do it for 1 year, because that's not the way we operate in business. We're going to be looking at longevity. And in longevity, I've got to say, if I was actually going to be putting up, I'd be saying that I want a 3 to 5 year plan. Now, a 3 to 5 year proposal, it's no different to what we discussed maybe on a matter that we argued about whether or not we provide someone with a 1 year lease or a 2 year lease a couple of weeks ago. It's longevity that a potential person may require to actually put up a proposal for 2021 on that basis. And I'm saying there, in the development of longevity of the event, and that the CEO report to council with options and funding requirements and other requirements. So let's hypothetically say State Growth get an EOY, they want a 3 year plan, they want X amount of in-kind. I'm not saying that we approve it, the CEO report back to us. One of the things that we've got to look at, and this is the beauty about this council, it has intellectual property, it has a lot of equipment sitting there. It's been now sitting there for nearly two years. We own it. The ratepayers own that. Now, it is not in true dollar terms, it's not a massive cost to provide all that in-kind assistance. Yes, we have to put it down in dollar terms what it would be as a sponsorship or whatever have you, but in true dollar terms, it sits there. It's not making us any money at this point in time. If by chance the taste doesn't go ahead or no one uses that, it'll still sit in storage and we've got to decide what to do with it. So if it could be put to good use to a potential person to use it at taste or a similar event or whatever the event is, I think it would be a benefit because, again, it's not a true dollar term. It's actually a book, what is called a book dollar term. And the last one, And this one here is basically if an alternative approach to deliver an event proceeds, and as part of the alternative approach, either, let's say it's either an authority, a private offer, or a committee, I'm saying that the CEO is delegated to partake in any such group on the basis of the CEO considers it appropriate to even do so, even in the interim. In other words, if the CEO feels that maybe it's a good idea to be part of a committee or a group of people that could provide some assistance, advice, or whatever have you, possibly only in the interim. It could be only a month. It could be, or the CEO can say, no, I don't want to partake, or whatever have you. I'm saying we'll leave that up to the CEO to do so. So basically, what I'm actually trying to say here is, let's give the CEO proper delegated authority by this council, in which we've done so in the past and we do so on a regular basis. We are the council. And I got to say, in all my years I've been here, if either the Lord Mayor or the General Manager has got to move on our behalf, we've always either approved the Lord Mayor to do so or approved the General Manager to do so. I can go on and start arguing the points of the motion of May 10th. I'm not going to bother because we are going to differ. Some of us are going to differ. I could go on about what happened here. We spoke for 120 minutes on a motion to nothing, but I'm not going to even bother providing the legal advice to this chamber. I'm saying to this chamber, let's give a clear directive to our General Manager to act in the best interests of this council, to act in the best interests of our ratepayers, to act as the best interests of the capital city of Hobart, to act in the best interests of the state, to ensure that the Sydney to Hobart 2021 has something for those yachties to cheer for. Because one of the things that actually gives me a buzz at every time I'm at the waterfront is seeing each and every yachty get cheered upon when they're coming into this city. That was the intent of the original taste that was brought forward by former Lord Mayor, Alderman John Freeman. And I've got to say, I have 30 seconds, Lord Mayor, please.
Moved by Alderman Barakis, seconded by Councillor Dutta. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. 30 seconds.
We normally get a 30 seconds. I didn't remember getting it. That's all. Sorry, Lord Mayor. The former Lord Mayor, John Freeman, who initiated the taste. And I've got to say, he would be a person that this council or even the state growth should be speaking to on why the taste started and what it was all about and how we slowly changed it into a music or an arts event. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, Alderman Sexton.
Yeah, look, I think, and I've told Alderman Zuko this, I was definitely going to oppose his original motion. Having had a look at this, I'm certainly in support of 1 to 3, and I've told him I'm not going to support 4, and I'll come to that in a minute. So why am I supporting 1 to 3? Well, I think now that we know that there has been an expression of interest for a taste style event, I think when I went onto the website and had a look, there was some reference on the website to the possibility that the Hobart City Council would provide in-kind support. I read that, I think, in that document perhaps, or somewhere on the website. So there was certainly an implication from the state government that would happen, or maybe I read it in the media, I can't remember. But the bottom line is, I think we do need to formalise that. I think we need to make it clear to a prospective person that's putting in an expression of interest that whether council will or won't provide in-kind assistance. And I say that for 2 reasons. One is I think we need to make it clear, but also the time frame for this expression of interest is extremely tight. What is it, the 20th or something like that? I think it's like 2 weeks. And there's a huge amount of information, a huge amount of work that has to be done, including a comprehensive business plan in order for, that needs to be developed in that very short time frame. So I think all of the definitive information that we can possibly give to anybody filling out one of those expression of interest forms, I think is useful. Part 1 does that. So I would certainly be perfectly happy for council to provide in-kind assistance as a one-off, and that the CEO be delegated to negotiate what that looks like and then come back to us. I think that's reasonable. Part 2 also formalises a contingency in the event that the expression of interest doesn't generate what we hope, it'll generate. And if it doesn't, then we need to very, very quickly have a process in place to move to determine what may or may not happen, and 3 really is just a follow-up of that. 4 I don't support, and I've said to a number of people, I don't think that once we've provided the initial support for the 21-22 taste style event, I don't think that we should be involved anymore. I think after that point in time, I think our involvement should be limited to the major events policy that we have, and any prospective future operator will have the opportunity, just as Dark Mofo does and just as other major events do, to put forward an application for a grant through our major events policy, and we can look at it. That may include the use of equipment, it may include other in-kind grant, other in-kind assistance, but it might also include cash. I don't believe that having the CEO on an authority or working hand in hand with a private operator or on some committee is appropriate, because we have determined that we will divest ourselves of this event. And I don't believe we're divesting ourselves of this event if we're then placing our most senior officer onto some committee or authority or board with a private operator. I don't think it's divesting it at all. And as I've said to a number of people, the situation I don't want to eventuate is like if I sell my house and then try to determine what the new owner will do with that house. We don't want to do that. Once we've made the decision to divest the taste which we have, we can provide assistance to ensure that something gets up this year. I think all of us want to see something on the waterfront this year, something substantial, and I agree with Alderman Zuko. It looks as though we're going to have a Sydney to Hobart yacht race. There does need to be something going on down there. I do support providing fireworks, which has also been mentioned, I think, in the expression of interest documentation, that we will provide fireworks as well as some in-kind support. So I think all of those things are a good thing, but I think they need to be formalised. And certainly the first 3 points of Alderman Zuko's motion I will support. Part 4 I won't.
Alderman Thomas.
Lord Mayor, I agree in principle with what's put forward. Unfortunately, there's some really significant drafting issues for me that make it really difficult for me to. I'd love it to be able. We had the time. Unfortunately, this was just landed on us at the council meeting, which is appalling given what we're asked to do. I have no problem, Alderman, through you to Alderman Zuko, with the principles here. But just really easy ones, such as in clause 3, we're asked to consider the CEO to be involved if there's a longer term plan on an alternative approach. Whereas if there's a longer term plan on a taste style event in one, we're only looking at a longer term funding in respect to a taste style event, whereas I'm sure the Alderman Zirko would have intended that same provision apply for either a taste style event or an alternative event. I've got some wording, but it's still sloppy. The CEO in 4, where Alderman Sexton is concerned, CEO or her delegate, I think we probably would save ourselves a lot of time if someone is engaged, and there was a very strong team involved with this in the previous past. As I say, 20 minutes to redraft the thing, it'd come up a lot better, but at this stage, the principle I have no problem with. The drafting is sloppy.
Point of clarification, Lord Mayor, if I may, please.
Yes, Alderman Zuko.
On the point of the CEO or the CEO's delegate, I actually had that in there in the first place. I've actually had these checked by people that are better than me, that know meeting procedures far better, actually 3 people in question. And they decided that they'd take that out on the basis that the CEO's got that authority anyway. Okay, right? Okay. In respect of the alternative doesn't necessarily. We're talking about an alternative approach, and the alternative approach is also in respect of should the alternative approach. So there might be an alternative approach that might come forward from an EOI expression, and if there is, well, the state growth will look at that and then consider it, and that's what I was referring to.
Just to clarify it, I was really referring to the fact that should a long-term plan be developed on the longevity of the report of the event, which is clearly in relation to the alternative approach, but that same provision on longevity, in other words, a 5-year, 6-year taste, does not appear in clause 1. As I say, it's late in the day, we could read through this, but it's not there.
We can talk. Semantics.
Briscoe.
Thank you. I just want some clarification. Now, in my view, that considering what's happening in Victoria at the moment and the uncertainty of it, it is up in the air, whatever event, if we have an event at along the foreshore. So I haven't gone into the tender documents by the government. I've seen the press release that was released by the city and the government, or the government mentioning the city. My understanding so far is that they're going to waiver the hire of the shed fee. And what else?
Funding.
To what extent? Have we know what extent?
It's their EOI process, and we don't know. No.
No, but certainly through the CEO, through you, Lord Mayor, to the CEO, from your memo, CEO. I think that's a dreadful title to call you CEO. But anyway, CEO, you've had officers or yourself meet with state planning or state growth. Have they indicated the level of funding?
Through you, Lord Mayor, thank you for the question. And look, they have indicated that they are certainly interested in providing financial support and a reasonably significant level of funding to make this happen in this year. But as to the detail of that, I think they were still working that through, and clearly we'll be discussing that with those that express interest, because I dare say it will be a negotiated point, similarly along the lines of the support that Council may consider providing by way of in-kind support as well, Lord Mayor.
Yes, well, yeah, so unspecified, could I just summarise what the CEO has done? And if I've said it incorrectly, please correct me, but an unspecified financial contribution from the government. Is there any indication whether they will insist on a non-ticketed event?
Through you, Lord Mayor, again, that's certainly something that the state will need to look at as part of their expression of interest, and presumably that will depend on the very configuration and commercial proposal that's put forward by those preparing an EOI. So, Lord Mayor, I can't be definitive about that because we're simply not at a point where that advice has been received. It will be part of the negotiation I understand that the state will be undertaking with the proponents who put forward EOIs.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I wish the process really good luck, positive. Let's hope it happens. But we know, being involved in the taste for 31 years, that planning should have started last year for this coming taste, if it is a taste type event. Let's be optimistic that they could achieve it, but there are significant barriers, and whether there are enough enough time for the bureaucrats to work through all those details which are not available. I'm sure, let's hope that they do. But I do support the motion that Alderman Zurko has mentioned, it because it really is a governance model. Some statements I've heard in the media from various elected members, including the Lord Mayor, indicates that we were going to supply, we were going to give things like in-kind things, but there's been no motion to do that. There might have been ideas around that, but there was no motion. So this, if the motion passes tonight, this gives a governance decision that we'll consider those kitchens at least, and perhaps some other in-kind support. I know that, was it a figure of 80 grand each of those kitchens, the capital cost? Maybe former chairman could remind me, a former chairman of the Taste, was it about $80,000 per kitchen?
I think the whole lot was about 1.2 million.
Yeah, so it is a significant asset, as Alderman Zurko said. It's just sitting up in the shed there, wherever it is. I don't know where it is, where they are. So providing that significant asset to help whoever, if there is an event going ahead, I think is a good move. And other things. But I think we've certainly got to give the imprimatur to the organisation that yes, we will give some in-kind support. after that, whether we actually give cash, now the budget papers are not public knowledge, are they? But presumably, let's have a hypothetical situation, saying that there would be money allocated in next year's budget at some stage when we discuss the budget for the taste. Would that be a question I can ask through you to CEO?
CEO, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. That is certainly something that has been canvassed in those early papers associated with the draft budget.
But and I presume it won't be to the extent of $1.6 million, which the city funded last major taste.
Lord Mayor, through you, Alderman, correct.
Thank you.
Just a point of clarification. So the document sorry, I'm just sitting down so I could read it. So the document that is on the website, the Events Tasmania website, states the state government will make PW1 available to the successful proponent. Revenue models that include event entry fees will be considered. City of Hobart will assist in 2021 by making available key infrastructure used in previous taste events. And the City of Hobart will also deliver a fireworks show on New Year's Eve. So they're very definitive statements. And that was one of the reasons why I thought I would support Alderman Zuko's modified motion, because I don't think we've made those decisions and I think we need to.
Councillor Dutton.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just a number of points that I want to refer to. Firstly, in the background, historically for me, having been outside of the council, it was the politics of it that I heard constantly, the politics of the taste. As an outsider, as a ratepayer, that was the thing that highlighted. When I came into council as an elected member in the last 2.5 years, the issue, the focus has been on cost. 1+1,900,000, 1.2, so forth. And so it was the cost factor that drove us to consider this whole thing in its totality and make a decision. And it was in that context that we made the decision as a council, 11 for and 1 against. It was a calculated, informative, and a professional advice given to us. And on the basis of that professional advice and evidence and facts, we made the decision. 11 said yes, we go ahead with the recommendations, and 1 against. Having taken that position, the media and also the Lord Mayor yourself made it very clear, as I heard the communications, that we were still going to support it, but the model and the methodology was going to change. And we stand by that. We still support it. We are not saying we are not going to support this. Now, for us to take the decision and that position of the council, hence led, in my view, that the government has taken leadership in this. And that is good. And I think that's where it should rest. And I would support totally the points made by Alderman Sexton and also Alderman Thomas, that I am concerned about this and therefore I won't support this, because it is just repeating some of the things we've already made very clear in our position as a council. Thank you.
Can I ask Alderman Zuko a question before we go on? Because I think the clearest statement in this motion is 1, and it's also the thing that's fundamentally what Alderman Sexton is raising, that we need to clarify what's in the government's EOI, which I don't know, is that, we would be willing to provide the in-kind one-off assistance. But Alderman Zuko, I don't know what 2, 3 and 4 all seem a bit sort of hard to actually grasp what you're getting at. And I wonder whether you'd consider having 1, 2, 3, 4 voted on separately, because different people might support different bits of it.
Lord Mayor, I'll clarify what 2 is. We have to wait for the LI outcomes, correct?
Well,
we have to wait for the LI outcomes. Now, should the LI outcomes come forward with a proponent right, who says, look, I'm willing to do something, but I would like some more funding coming through.
From council?
No, just more funding. I didn't say from council, right? More funding coming through, right? Now, the government might come to the council and say, look, will you put in more funding? Now, I've got to say, and I said this very, very clearly to Alderman Sexton, I'm not seeking the council to provide funds for this. My primary objective is to provide assistance and in-kind assistance. But if, by chance, there is someone there, the General Manager can come to us and say, look, someone wants, look, people don't understand how time factor here we have.
Okay.
And that's basically it. The third part is also based on time factor, right? It's really there to say, allow the CEO to negotiate with. Look, it might be. I'll just give you a scenario. It could be that the stall holders put an application in. Then it could be.
Just a point of clarification.
Yes, I am. I'm clarifying
Very
for the
quickly,
Lord. It could be that stall holders put in, a private developer put in, but then the government might turn around and say to those people, let's get you guys together, and if the CEO's got the delegated authority to negotiate, it could come to a part. That could be the alternative.
Alderman Zucker, my question was, would you be happy to separate 1, 2, 3, 4, just in case some of us support?
No, I don't. I believe that, and I'd say this is the reason. 1, 2 and 3 are interlocked in the motion. 4 is not.
Councillor Sherlock.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I think that was a really wonderful display of a few different pieces of it that were really red herring pieces of information. There was also other parts that were a very fascinating delivery of whataboutery comments, which to me, to quote some of the things that have been said in this chamber before, this is one of the worst motions I have seen in my 2.5 years here on council. It is literally one of the worst. Not only is it pompous, it's irrelevant, and it's also a waste of time. And now the reasons why I say this is, let me just read point number 1. Considering the Department of State Growth has officially advertised expressions of interest for a taste style event or similar, full stop. What does that say? That's a full stop there. I don't know what that sentence says. Let me read it again. Considering the Department of State Growth has officially advertised expressions of interest for a state taste style event or similar. What does that mean?
Lord Mayor.
I'll just finish.
Point of clarification. I have a typo in there.
Okay.
I'll remove the in. Look,
All right.
I'm not going to be here to be lectured,
Councillor Sherlock.
please.
I'm not here lecturing.
You are lecturing.
No, I'm not. No, this is the constant thing.
Your intervention, please.
Once again, what constantly happens when I raise facts, I'm either lecturing or I'm preaching. These are facts. It says in interest and then full stop.
Mayor,
I don't know
I've
what the
withdrawn
sentence says.
in. Okay. So that matter stay.
okay.
I've withdrawn that word.
And the full
Enough,
stop
enough.
becomes a comma.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
That's right.
And now let's go back to another one. Point number 3. Should an appropriate alternative approach to deliver a 2021-22 taste style event or similar event be forthcoming? Question mark. What's the question? Why is there a question mark there? I'm really sorry, but it's a clumsily written piece of points that we now have to vote on. And I'm very, very sorry. Yes, please do. Please do, because this is... Yeah, please don't interrupt me. I didn't interrupt you. It's not ridiculous, it's facts. If facts are ridiculous, come on. Seriously, if we have to sit... How embarrassing is it for the state government, number 1, to have us come here and talk about these things when they've clearly said they're going to do something already, which if you've already read, it's talked about financial support, P1... It's also embarrassing to what has already been decided on the 10th of May. Let me read you something that's succinct. Point number 2 on the 10th of May. The Council delegate to the Chief Executive Officer the authority to develop a transition plan to divest the city of the exclusive ownership and delivery of the Taste of Tasmania. succinct, precise, know what it means. It takes care of 2, 3 and 4, and as does number 5 on the 10th of May. The new state government be requested to honour the commitment of the previous government to support the consideration of further options around the Taste of Tasmania event. I will either be voting absolutely 0 on this, nothing, no, because how can we all sit here, like all of us around here, and actually vote yes for this? Appalling. And we have to sit here and go, yeah, that's most certainly a very legitimate motion. It is one of the most appalling I have actually had to vote on. So please consider this, please, to voting against it, or a procedural motion, send it back to the committee of which I'm a chair, and talk about it. But really, no one wants to talk about it because it's already been discussed.
We have talked about it, so...
Yeah, it's just been discussed, it's been outlined, we have to sit here and do this. And so we look at point number 3, a further report to be provided to the council with the transition plan. Thank you for raising that, Alderman Briscoe. You just made my point for me. Number 3, a further report to be provided to the council with the transition plan outcome and proposal for the future of the Taste of Tasmania by the end of the 2021-22 financial year. Again, takes care succinctly of point 3 and 4 and even 2.
Do you want to move a procedural motion, Councillor Sherlock?
No, I don't. I would just be voting on no for it, and I would really encourage everybody to be voting no for it as well. If there is any.
Alderman Thomas. Oh no, you've spoken, Alderman Thomas.
I don't know. I'm getting some dagger stares, but one, in the event that this just might help. One, in the event through the state EOI process there is a future for a taste style event or an alternative event, then the council, on a report back to it, will consider either in-kind or potential financial support. 2, the CEO be authorised to act in the matter. Full stop. End of story. We can go home.
Just item 1.
So essentially reworking of item 1.
I think it's really... sorry, Alderman Thomas, I think it's what I was just asking Alderman Zuko. Would he just consider separating 1 out?
Oh, but a rewording one.
So, Alderman Zuko, I think I can actually just...
You can what?
Can I just put those items, or do we need... I'm not sure whether I need your approval for that.
My motion, isn't it? Whose motion is it?
Alderman Zuko's approval.
Yeah.
But are you comfortable with trying to just separate that out, Alderman Zuko? I think there'd be more support around the table.
Lord Mayor, I'm going to say this. I'm not going to be brought into this chamber and lectured by anybody.
No.
Right? Okay? All right? I'll say this to you. This has been checked by 3 people, right, who have there might be a couple of typos when I might have finalised it, because I only finalised it this afternoon because I had to quickly change it from what it was. But to play pedantics with it, you know what? You know, sorry.
This is not pedantics. I was the Crown Solicitor of the state.
That's fine.
I would never have allowed this through.
Good on you.
I don't care who you talk to.
All right. Further discussion. I think...
Guess what, Lord Mayor? I prefer to lose it than to sit here and be lectured by anybody. Okay? I'm not changing it. The seconder can't, so that's the way it stands.
Thank you. Lord Mayor, I just have a question through you to the CEO or the Director, if maybe they would like to make a comment either on the motion that Alderman Zuko has put up or the foreshadowed from Alderman Thomas, since this one is significantly different to the one that we had on the books, so we couldn't actually have your comment on that. Is any of this actually necessary? Because it would have been my understanding that this would all have been in the conversations that you're already having with the state. So I'd just like some clarification on that, and for the foreshadowed motion as well, please.
So we have... Oh, sorry, I didn't realise. Was that a foreshadowed motion, Alderman?
Sorry.
It's some alternative wording to what... It'll still create exactly the same as the 20 paragraphs.
There's no point trying to doctor it here.
All right. CEO, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor and Councillor. Thanks for the question. It probably does get into the grey area, though, for me in terms of entering debate, to sort of be precise in my response to you regarding that matter. Suffice to say, officers will work with the outcome from council, and we've been really consistent in the conversations that we've had to date with state government bureaucrats to ensure that we're aligned in our way forward. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Just a clarification, just to be absolutely certain, the city has not given any written communication that we will be supplying any money or any in-kind support. or even though they've got it in their document.
Right, correct.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. That is correct, Alderman. We've not provided written correspondence to that effect. It's been discussed in the context of what might come forward by way of expressions of interest, and then there was certainly a view that some state government would come back to council if required, and that we would be seeking to come back to council with any of those requirements that come out of negotiations with the state once they've received expressions of interest.
Thank you for that. Just but re-emphasise what Alderman Sexton read out from the tender is that they say that we are going to provide.
Is that a question?
Yes, it is. So that is clearly not correct from the decisions we've made so far.
Lord Mayor, if I can be quite clear, so there have been discussions about council's preparedness to enter into discussions about the allocation of resources and support, namely in kind, that has been referenced previously, but we've not made a commitment for that outside of a council decision-making process. Thereby, a report, once those expressions of interest are received and the state government have got a clear pathway forward, they would then necessarily engage with council to seek commitment or in-kind support, whatever that looks like. Officers, my understanding, Lord Mayor, is that we have provided in the draft budget papers, as I said earlier, an allocation that can be used if required, but that is subject to council decision, Lord Mayor.
Thank you.
Barakis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just to touch on a couple of the points that were mentioned, just to go over what the council determined on the 10th of May. Council resolved that it no longer needs to own or nor deliver the Taste of Tasmania. So that was the primary decision that we made. And the CEO was given authority, given delegation to develop a transition plan.
So, point of clarification, Lord Mayor, that was the primary decision we made, or that was one of the points that we made?
Can't interfere with the debate.
Lord Mayor, that
just as a point of clarification.
I would say that was the core decision, and everything else was supplementing that. That's
Thank you.
my interpretation of it. The CEO has delegated authority to develop a transition plan to divest the city, and a report be provided to the council with the transition plan. At no point in my interpretation of the motion, I think the interpretation of many of the aldermen here, at no point was the CEO or the mayor delegated authority to negotiate with the state government. I agree that these negotiations are needed for this coming taste, but the only decision that the council has currently made is that it doesn't want to progress with the taste at all, but it wants to get reports back on the transition. So it's fine if we're talking about getting a report, but we need to, I think it's appropriate, and I've got no issue with the mayor and the CEO. Sorry, I think I've said general manager and CEO in between, but I think it's completely appropriate for those talks to happen. But I think in the interest of good governance, it's also important that the council give that authorisation to happen explicitly, because that authorisation is not provided anywhere in the previous motion. There's a lot of talk about formulating reports that will come back to council and we can make those decisions then. But I think if we want those negotiations to happen in a timely manner, and I think given the public response when this decision was made on the 10th of May, I think it is important that we do that in a timely manner. I think it's necessary that we provide that delegation. I don't think that's a controversial statement to make. I think it's absolutely appropriate that these negotiations happen. I think if the state government is keen to get on board and keen to take a leadership role on this important event, I think that's great. And I think if we want to have any involvement in that, we should, as a council, give that authority and give our stamp of approval for that. I don't think that there's anything inappropriate about that, but I don't think that the motion that was passed on the 10th of May gives that authority. That was perhaps a oversight that was made by us on the 10th of May, and perhaps this whole conversation, the conversation last council meeting, wouldn't have happened if we didn't do that. And that's not to criticise anybody, because I'd be equally as culpable of that. But I think it is important that we do give the authorisation and give our tick of approval for those conversations to happen. At the very least, to save any confusion amongst the public that the council's withdrawn support of the council will no longer be taking part in this initial event. I think we've got the long-term plan. I think people know what to expect in the long-term future, and that's what these transition plans, these reports for transition plans are for. But in the meantime, there's a lot of confusion about what's going to happen with the 2021-22 event. And I think it does zero damage. It only helps to clarify things that we give that authority to the mayor and to the general manager, CEO, sorry, that authority to do what they've already been doing. But I think it's best that we formalise that. So look, with the typos that were pointed out aside, and I think we can just fix that on the spot. I think the intent of the motion, I think, is to formalise something that we should be formalising. I don't think it does anything different to that.
Further discussion? Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I can't believe that we're discussing this motion before us, and it's good to know that Alderman Sexton might have had conversations with Alderman Zuko in relation to this. I certainly didn't see it until well after 5 o'clock, so just to make that point again.
Point of clarification, I didn't know, I did not see this until I came into the thing and saw it on my thing. The discussions I'd had with Alderman Zuko about his former motion.
Right, former motion, okay, all right. Well, that's good too. I think the point's made. Look, I find this quite embarrassing for this council, to be honest, that we just cannot let go of the taste. We just can't just push the boat out and let go. We show a lack of faith in those processes of the discussions between state growth, the Premier, the council officers, which we all know in our heart of hearts that that's actually happening and they're getting on with it. And yet we just cannot let the taste go. And, there's a lot of emotional involvement in relation to something that your people have been involved with for many, many years. But and I think Councillor Dutta made the point that there's always been this politicization of the taste, and so it goes. I just cannot support this motion in its state. And for its intention. I think we let the council officers get on with their jobs, whether it's the CEO, whether it's Mr. Short and his team. We know that conversation has been had. We don't need to meddle any further. We have made a decision as a council, one vote to, was it 10 or 11? We've done that. So let's leave it. Let's push the boat out and leave the taste to sail on this, what might be a stormy sea, over this course of the beginning, or the foray away from council's control and involvement. But let's let it go. We have to move on.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I think it was Councillor Coates. Have you spoken, or is it a question?
Not on this motion.
No, on this motion. Okay, Councillor Coates then first.
Thank you. Look, I'm going to try and do this in reverse in some ways. I think obviously whenever a motion is passed, when it comes to wording a motion, that ultimately the council officers have to get that motion, look at it, recall what was discussed when we were passing it at the time, and then implement that decision and the motion as passed. I think in this instance, the Alderman's done a very good job for us. He has done his governance right, and he's noted, and I think it was articulated as well by Alderman Sexton, that what appears to be actually happening on the ground is potentially somewhat different to how some people would read the motion that we passed as a group. Specifically, I think it's that section 2 where it says delegates chief executive authority to develop a transition plan. Most people think a transition plan is a document and that outlines how best for us to transition. Whereas I think in reality what's happened is there's been negotiations taking place and clearly, whether explicitly offered or not, an understanding that council facilities will be used and those sort of things. And I think Alderman Zuko's correctly picked that up. He didn't have much time to do it. We didn't have much time to consider it, so it's here, so it does have a typo in it. But ultimately, brought forward a motion to us to say, look, this is what's happening. Alderman Sexton read it out of documents themselves and said, this support's being offered, fireworks are being considered, and also a commitment to be able to use the facilities. And for the good governance and for the backing up of the council staff who we want to actually go out and implement the decision made on the 10th of May, potentially we need to now pass a motion explicitly authorising that, because that's what's actually happening. And I think, and this is what I said going backwards, if we were not to pass this today, it really sends a message to the council staff that you shouldn't be entering into those negotiations because you haven't been offered. You shouldn't be offering the PW1 facility. You shouldn't be offering support for fireworks this year, because when the opportunity came up for us as a group to actually vote on it, to specifically give that authorisation, we said no. And I admit some of you might read parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of our motion previously to be providing that authority. But clearly some in the community woke up the next day and thought, oh my gosh, there's not going to be a taste event this year, council are withdrawing all support. Some in the community have read what the expression of interest has said and have gone and looked at the motion that we passed and said, well, wait a second, that's not quite right. And I agree that you can read things 2 ways, 3 ways, 10 different ways, but I don't see what we're being asked to vote on now as in any way removing our decision that we made on the 10th. I don't see it in any way as, if you like, not wanting to put that boat out to sea. In some ways, I think what it does is let it go adrift, because, what this does is essentially it gives the CEO more power, more authority and explicit authority to be able to take the actions that we all know are under discussion. And so, look, I think in this instance, the Alderman's actually done the right thing, has said, look, there is a bit of ambiguity out there. There is a bit of concern, there is a bit of fear, there is a bit of a mismatch between what the state government seems to be doing and what we're doing. And if you like, between what we specifically authorised and what some people read it as specifically enabling. And I think, given the short time frames involved, he's actually done the right thing here. Typos notwithstanding, I don't see this in any way as counteracting the decision that we previously made. And I think that it actually helps support, the intent of it at least, supports what's already happening on the ground and even gives that extra little bit of emphasis. And I would hope that in tomorrow's morning paper, rather than Taste of Tasmania cancelled, what we instead read is, the council has reaffirmed that we are undertaking our decision made on the 10th. We no longer need to own or deliver the taste, but for the 2021 season that everyone is worried about, we are backing the government to the hill. We are offering PW1, we are supporting fireworks, we are doing that.
Councillor Coates, PW1 is not owned by the council.
Oh, sorry. PW1. The equipment, sorry, the equipment in the PW1. Sorry, that was my mistake. But, I just think this is, some might say it's pedantic over governance, but I think it was a point that was picked up, a point that has been misunderstood in the community, and I don't see us passing this motion, or at least the first 3 points, as necessarily counteracting that. A few typos, considering it was typed very, my understanding is it was put together very quickly, notwithstanding. Thanks.
That the motion be put, Lord Mayor.
That's a procedural motion that would
We
need
need
to
to
be
second that.
seconded. Councillor,
I only ask a question. So I can second that. I only ask a question.
May I make
sorry, no, it's a procedural motion. I just have
Lord
to.
Mayor,
It's been
this
put-
is shutting down debate, and there are
Okay,
people in this
it's a
chamber that always
procedural
argue that.
motion. It's a procedural motion from Councillor Dutta, seconded by Councillor Sherlock, and I think there is a foreshadowed motion too. But yeah, okay. So we're being put the motion. Alderman Zuko's motion be put is the procedural motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Show of hands. All those in favour.
Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Ewan, Alderman Thomas, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Against.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Sexton, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Briscoe.
Okay, I'll put that motion.
It denies me the right
I think there's
to sum up the motion. And I got to say, this is absolutely absurd.
Point of order.
Yeah.
I don't care about your point of order. This is absurd. You're denying me the right to sum up. Okay?
To the chair.
I don't care.
Don't behave like that. Fix to the chair.
Well, don't behave. This council shouldn't behave in the manner it's behaving. That's okay.
We're going
Lord Mayor, put the motion.
Thank you, Alderman Zuko. I don't need to be directed
This is
by you.
atrocious. You're denying me the right.
All those in favour say aye.
Are we doing it?
Well, this is the procedural motion.
I think we've done the procedural.
Done the procedural motion.
So we're putting Alderman Zuko's motion parts 1 to 3 and then 4 separately. All those in favour of parts 1 to 3 say aye. Against say no. No. Show of hands. All those in favour of parts 1 to 3.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Sexton, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe.
All those against?
Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Ewan, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Item 4.
Oh, you've got to declare.
Oh, so that's...
6 all, Lord Mayor. This motion was lost.
Okay, so now we've got item 4. All those in favour say aye. Against say no.
No.
Show of hands. All those in favour of item 4.
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas.
Against?
Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Ewan, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
What was Alderman Briscoe? Did you vote?
I think I voted for it. Sorry, and it wasn't.
Lord Mayor. Item 4. Sorry, I'll just finish that one.
Just clarify. I voted for Alderman Zuko's number 4.
Okay.
Maybe I just did this.
So the vote is on item 4.
Sorry, Lord Mayor. Could we perhaps run that again, Lord Mayor?
All those in favour of item 4 say aye. Show of hands for item 4.
So, Alderman Zuko, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe.
Against?
Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Ewan, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor. That was lost as well, Lord Mayor. 5 votes to 7.
Foreshadow motion.
Alderman Thomas.
And I'll second it.
If you would like to read that out, Alderman Thomas.
Yeah, and look, before I do that, I'd like to say I'm picking up the essence of what was in the previous. Well, I think I am.
I'm just going to go for a walk.
Oh, dear.
Okay, Alderman Thomas, if you'd like to read your
Item
motion.
1. In the event through the state EOI process there is a future for a taste style event or an alternative event in 2021-2022 and potentially beyond that, then the council, on a report back to it, will consider either in-kind and or potentially financial support. 2. The Chief Executive Officer be authorised to act in the matter.
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Briscoe. Any discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no.
No.
Show of hands. All those in favour.
Alderman Sexton, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe and the Lord Mayor.
Against?
Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Ewan and the Deputy Lord Mayor.
Okay, so that was carried, and we will move on.
Will we move on?
Item 13 is the Community Culture and Events Committee. I'll invite Councillor Sherlock to introduce this motion.
Yep, sorry, Lord Mayor.
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. So the recommendations are already outlined, but just as an overview, the trial's aims were to expand opportunities for performance and creative expression throughout Hobart. Prior to the trial, there were limited opportunities for permitted buskers to perform in Hobart, 2 in Elizabeth Mall and 1 in Wellington Court. Performance was limited to between the hours of 11 and 2 p.m. Research identified that the Hobart program was out of step with other programs around Australia and New Zealand. The trial increased the permitted performance locations from 3 to 27 across the city centre, outer suburbs and parks locations, and increased the permitted times. Overall, the feedback and comments about the trial were positive, and it is understood that there is a general desire for greater activation around Hobart, as well as support provided to the arts and culture sector. Thank you.
Further discussion?
That seconded?
No, seconded by Councillor Ewan. No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 14.
Lord Mayor, in the absence of all those senior people, I'll move this motion. That's all I need to say.
Seconded by Councillor Sherlock. It's just to receive a note. Any discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. We're now moving. I'd like a motion to move into the closed. Move by Alderman Baraka, seconded by Councillor Sherlock. We will now move